This Choircast podcast episode is brought to you by Maria Francesca French, author of the newly released book, Safer Than the Known Way, A Post-Christian Journey. It's an exploration of the promise of faith from a post-Christian perspective. What does it mean to speak beyond binaries of theism and atheism, conservative and liberal, fact and fiction? Why might a new type of theological imagination, one that defies categories and comparison, with the challenge actual deconstruction offers, be all that is next? Here you will find a compelling read of story and personal journey with strong scholarship and deep theology, significant and transformational thought that has lived in the ivory tower for too long but made accessible and resonant. Read along as the tables are turned, head towards a horizon with no line, and follow a compass that doesn't point north. Prepare to be beckoned by ghosts and travel a path unknown, because to go out into the elegant chaos of all that might be waiting for us after Christianity while still engaging in meaningful faith is safer than all that might be considered certain. If you have moved past traditional notions of God, beyond mechanisms of belief, and find yourself relentlessly curious about what might be next, this book is for you. This and more in my new book, Safer Than the Known Way, A Post-Christian Journey, out now.
Hey heathens, you're listening to the Deadly Faith Podcast, where religion and crime collide. I'm Laci.
And I'm Lola.
And this shit is racist.
The mind that was in Jesus, that mind is in me.
Without me, life has no meaning.
Why would God tell you what I'm thinking and tell you what I've said to my wife or my husband when you're not around? It's because I'm the pastor of the church and I need to know.
This is the only place where you can see truth.
And with us today, a special guest for the first time ever. He's a Black man. His name is Kyle, and he's on the Messy Spirituality podcast with moi. So please welcome to the show, Kyle.
Hey.
Kyle. Hello, Kyle. We are so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
To talk about a case today and just have this conversation and progress in understanding and learning the experiences of people of color and what that involves within church and out of church and within crime. And we couldn't think of anyone better than you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're really excited to have you here today and have this conversation. You are our first guest.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I like being first. I love being first. I'm the firstborn, so there's something, that whole first thing, you understand.
There you go.
Let me say this before we get into it, if I may. One, I am definitely Black. It's just, probably
I
as black
got
as
one
they
thing
come.
right. Good. Okay.
To our listeners, I may sound white. I've been told that many times in my life. I don't know what that means, but they say you sound white. But I assure you, I am Black. And if anyone's listening and they want some verification, I can throw in a few words that'll validate my Blackness if necessary. Okay.
We will also post a picture on our Instagram so we can all, you can all be rest assured Kyle is Black.
Oh, we're going to link all of his social media too, because you all have to follow him on social media, because I love his posts. He's such a positive person. So
Thank
good.
You.
Shameless plug.
So
and
good.
to you both, I say thank you for lending a voice to these topics, this topic particularly, because, there's something that's undeniable about the topic.
Absolutely.
And what's undeniable, one of the things there's many things that's undeniable, but one of the things that's undeniable is if the problem's going to get fixed, it's not something we can do.
Mm-hmm.
We can't fix the problem because we didn't start the problem.
Exactly.
We didn't initiate the issue.
Yeah.
And I know that makes some white people feel very uncomfortable because they'll say, well, I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't lynched anyone. I haven't burnt anyone. I haven't been in the KKK. And they'll say things like that. And we've been nice to Black people.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you. However, we need your voice.
Exactly.
So when things happen that are wrong, they're wrong. You know they're wrong.
Yeah.
If we need your voice, because it's your voice that's going to make the difference, because your voice added to another voice in your community, from your community, that's what's going to make the difference. It's the lack of voices that is the issue, not your hearts. I'm sure your hearts are in the right places, but we need your voice. So thank you both for your voices.
Thank you. Yeah, and you're welcome. I think a big layer of that as well is it specifically speaking from my experience was not understanding systemic racism and how that is played out within our country and within our day-to-day life, and how, yes, I would say, oh, I'm not racist. But then as I sat and unlearned and really peeled back the layers, I understood that, yes, I was, and I still am, because that's how I was taught on certain things. And so things will pop in my head and I'm like, whoa, that's racist. And I have to sit and take that in and peel back those layers. And I think it's really uncomfortable for some people to sit with that and admit, I have privilege. That doesn't mean I have a perfect life, but I do have white privilege.
Right.
And I am racist. And that can be really hard for people. When I first started my, journey in unlearning and learning racism and how that's played out in America and within the lives of people I love, I wrote at the very beginning of it, I wrote a blog entry called Dear Black Lives Matter. And the whole letter was just an open apology for not noticing and recognizing my inherited and inerrant white privilege that I have just for being born white here in America. And I went on and I said a bunch of other stuff, but I had somebody actually get mad at me for writing that post. We got into a very big argument and they took it as I was apologizing for being white, for being born white. And I was like, that is not what I said. I can't control being born white. They're not asking us to apologize for being white. They're asking us to just recognize that by us being white, we have a privilege that they don't.
Right.
That does not mean that our life does not have trouble. It just means that the color of our skin does not play into those troubles and isn't a factor in it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well said.
Thank you.
I have to say a side note. Looking at you guys, I am the whitest person here. I look like Forks, Washington, like Twilight. Both of you have such nice, rosy kind of color. And then I look like the dead of winter with my background too.
It has to be the bulbs or your lighting, because you have very cool lighting, and I and Kyle have very warm lighting. And so I look like I have a soft tan, and Lola looks like she's Casper's girlfriend.
I am a sheet of paper, college rule, if you will. So,
if you will.
It's glaringly obvious that I carry privilege, unfortunately. So
I love it. So we have some questions for Kyle, but we're going to save those for the end. Today, we are going to be covering the case of the assassination of Medgar Evers, and I'm going to be presenting today. But I want to ask Kyle really quick. Kyle, do you know this case? And if so, how much do you know about it?
I do know about it. There's been documentaries and I think even a movie.
Yes.
On some level about it. And, it was a little bit before my era, my birth. So I wasn't in that time frame, like my mom's generation. But I definitely heard about it, and heard about it several times throughout my life. And I did watch a few of the documentaries about it. And what I know about it from a feeling perspective is it's incredibly sad that, a human being lost his life just because he wanted people to enjoy the right and the privilege of being able to do something so simple as voting.
Yes. And that is something I want to talk about, is just how you know about this case. I did not know about this case until I was reading a book about racism, and it got brought up in the book, and then it sent me on a rabbit hole to learn more about it. Had no idea there were documentaries about it. Had no idea there was a movie made about this. I knew none of it. And I was like, why was this? And then when I was doing my research, I learned how much of a pillar of the, desegregation activism group, how much of a pillar he was.
Yeah.
Why was this story not told more in our schools? And I did grow up in the South, so that kind of explains the why in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so before we jump in, trigger warnings, racism, murder. It's not very graphic, but there is murder. There are some mentions of lynchings, rape, physical assault, and arson. But there's just a few little mentions. We don't go into major details. So are you guys ready?
I think
Yes.
I'm ready. I'm nervous. I don't know anything about this story at all, and I feel bad for it. Since apparently
And
this person was such an important, pivotal
yeah,
person.
and that is the problem with our education system.
He wasn't as well known as Martin Luther King,
Right.
but he was pretty close to
Wow.
that type of status.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very close. Very, very close.
Yeah.
Well, please
And
enlighten us.
the thing, and I want to say this really quick before getting into it. So I'm going back to school in January, and one of the classes that I have to take over the next, couple semesters, I have to take a fine arts class, and they have like a list of different classes that I can choose from. So like introduction to arts, introduction to theater, and this and that. And I found that they have a Black arts class, and I looked at it, and it's like all about Black culture and how they played into arts and music and stuff. And I looked at it. I can't take it, or I'm not going to take it for like 2 semesters, I think. I might take it next semester. I can't remember. But there was only one class available. That was it. I live in the South. And so, maybe that's because nobody wants to take it, or because the college doesn't want to put money towards that. But then, it's probably a mixture of both. But that's systemic racism and like not being able to give the adequate education for Black culture. And so I'm crossing my fingers I get to take that class, because I would be, and I am highly interested in that one. But
Cool.
that
That's
just
awesome.
shows why there's a lot of Black history that we don't know about, because it's not taught in our very heavily white-centric schools. Whitewashed history. So, okay, Medgar Evers. So Medgar Evers was born the third of 5 children on July 2nd, 1925 in Decatur, Mississippi. His family owned a small farm, while his dad also worked at a sawmill. Due to the times, Medgar and his siblings had to walk 12 miles. I cannot imagine this, but 12 miles just to attend the segregated school near them. When Medgar was only 12 years old, one of his neighbors was lynched, and his bloody clothes were hung on the fence for an entire year, so that it was used as like an intimidation tactic.
I'm very confused. Why were the clothes could other people not take it down? Was it law enforcement that put it up?
No, it was the people who lynched the neighbor, but the Black people were not going to take the clothes down, because that would put them in danger of getting lynched themselves.
Okay.
And the white people weren't going to take it down, because they knew it was an intimidation tactic that scared the Black people. So, yeah.
What's wrong with people? Anyway.
A lot. Now, as a teen, he would witness white groups of other teens and adults drive around and look for a Black person to beat up or even run over with their car. So he witnessed this growing up.
Like for sport?
For sport.
Like just for kicks and giggles?
For shits and giggles. This was their Friday night fun. Saturday night fever was them torturing other Black members in their community. And this is Medgar's experience, but this was very common amongst many Black communities around, especially in the South. Now, after Medgar was a sophomore in high school, he decided to follow his brother Charles, and he joined the army. He served from 1943 to 1945, and he fought in the Battle of Normandy in 1944 in a segregated battalion. So even within the army, he was still segregated. Now, at the end of the war, Medgar was honorably discharged as a sergeant in 1945. When he got home, he did finish his high school degree, and then in 1948, he enrolled at Alcorn Agricultural and Mechanical College, majoring in business administration. During his time at college, he joined the debate team, football team, track team, sang in the choir, and was junior class president.
Dang. What a grocery list. Okay.
You signed up for everything. I joined a cult. So you could definitely beat me. I was just really impressed with all that.
Dang, yeah.
He graduated and earned his Bachelor of Arts in 1952. While he was in college, he ended up meeting his future wife, Merle. Is that how you say her name? Merle? I think it's Merle. That's how you say it. Myrlie, I think is how you spell it. At least that's how I have it in my notes. Merle. That's what I'm going to say. I'm so sorry if I pronounce that wrong. I did write out some pronunciations for a couple of things. I'm bad at pronunciation. So Merle Bleasley. Together, they had 3 children, Daryl, Rena, and James. The couple moved to Mound Bayou, Mississippi, where Evers became an insurance salesman. Now, in Mound Bayou, it was a town developed by African Americans. And as an insurance salesman, he got to see a lot of the community. And he saw very quickly how a lot of the African American community was just super poor. And he did not like that. And he decided that he was going to do something about it. So he also saw overseas when he was in the military, he saw how Black people were treated as equals. And he was like, I want to bring that to America. He even said that when he was coming home, he said that to some of his like battalion, like fellow military officers.
Comrades.
And some of, comrades. Yeah. And some of them actually like desperately wanted to stay in the other countries because there they were seen as equal and they didn't want to come back to America. So he was like, you know what? I'm going to bring that over here. I'm going to do something to change this. This isn't fair that my community is this poor. So Medgar became an activist for the desegregation movement, and he became the president of the Regional Council of Negro Leadership, which I will call it the RCNL. Now, this organization, they organized actions for civil rights movements. So Evers helped organize the RCNL's boycotts of gasoline stations that denied Blacks and the use of the station's restrooms. So this was very common in there that like there were certain restrooms that only whites could use. And so if Black people couldn't go in the bathroom, they would do a boycott.
The same shit comes out of all of you. What?
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Now, in 1954, we have the Brown versus Board of Education ruling. This ruling made segregation in public schools illegal. So this was kind of the catalyst to really help push the civil rights movement further and to really get desegregation going. Now, after this ruling, Medgar tried to apply to the publicly funded, so it's a public university, the University of Mississippi Law School, but he was rejected based on his race. Now, even though segregated schools were considered illegal, it was not a change that happened overnight. Being in a segregated community, these are very held opinions. I don't even want to call them beliefs, but I guess for some it was beliefs within their religion that like segregation was biblical. And so trying to change those beliefs is not something that's going to happen overnight. And so it took, and this is what's so frustrating to me, and I feel like probably to many others, it's like the Black community had the backing of the law, and yet they still had to take it into their own hands to push the civil rights movement forward and get desegregation to actually start fucking happening. It's frustrating. And that's coming from a white person, so I can't imagine how much more frustrating it is for the Black community.
Kyle, what year were you born?
71.
Okay.
And this is New Jersey too, so I'm north. So anything in this segregation era, I don't know personally. I didn't experience personally. Colored only this, colored only that. I didn't experience any of that personally, and I really didn't hear about it until I got into school because we were in a more urban area. So we definitely heard a lot about it, and occasionally I'd hear my mother mention something about it.
Your mom probably had some stories about her experience.
My mother never experienced because she was born in New Jersey, but my father, or the man who raised me, he was born in Georgia. So one reason why he left Georgia at a very young age is because he hated that people would call him boy.
Oh,
and
gosh.
So he was like, I can't do this because I'm gonna kill somebody.
Yeah. Right. I can't blame him.
So he came north, and there had been a lot of stories like that of migrations from people from the south to the north. But not everyone can do that. Not everyone had the opportunity to do it or the courage to do it. So you try to make the best of it where you were.
Yeah. as somebody who has moved state to state, multiple times and across the country a couple times, it is terrifying and also very expensive to uproot your life. And so I can understand why some people either A, couldn't financially afford it, or B, were terrified to, because a lot of these areas, I'm sure it was deeply integrated within multiple generations of families. And so you're having to choose to move away from your grandparents, your parents, your siblings. That is really hard to have to do. Okay, so following the Brown versus Board of Education decision, the local whites founded the White Citizens Council in Mississippi. Yeah. I knew you were going to laugh when I said that.
I guffawed.
As if they needed more ways to be
right,
in power and control and recognized, as if they needed more.
Yeah. Heaven forbid you drink from the same fountain. I mean, the whites had all the audacity, then plus some. So, unfortunately, numerous local chapters started to spring up all across the deep south of the White Citizens Council. Now, their whole mission was to fight against desegregation in schools and even within the community. Now, they would work to keep Black people from voting and pushed the public challenge law that allowed 2 registered voters to challenge the legitimacy of another voter. So they would do this in a way to illegitimize Black votes. So a Black person be standing in line trying to vote, and then 2 white voters would come up and be like, you're not registered, or you're an illegitimate voter. And then they would get that Black person's vote thrown out. This worked so well in disqualifying Black votes that in one district, Black votes were purged by 95%.
What?
95%.
How do you have that many white people? What?
We have a lot of white people. Jesus Christ, they're everywhere.
And they all look all the Black or all the white people look the same, so they just keep going back.
Everyone's in line fighting over the votes and who qualifies. Yeah, they did this, and they disqualified many, many, many Black voters. And this was legal. Even though the Black person was legally allowed to vote, they were legitimate voters. Just because 2 white people came in and were like, no, we don't think so, their vote would get thrown out. So very shady shit. Now, they would also boycott Black-owned businesses, threaten jobs, get people fired or evicted from their homes, keep them from getting loans, and more. Even though they publicly denounced violence, many of their members incited violence, which led to lynchings, murders, rapes, assaults, and arson. So them saying we're against violence, it was just to save face, but behind closed doors, they were, stirring up all the shit and causing a lot of violence to happen. On November 24th, 1954, Medgar was named as the National Association of Advancement of Colored People's first ever field secretary of the state of Mississippi. So this was literally the first one ever in Mississippi, and Medgar got to hold that title. Yeah, so the National Association...
I'm sorry, what does that title mean?
NCAA.
NCAA.
NCAA. Yeah, NCAA. Oh God, I'm getting tongue tied. NAACP.
What does his exact title though mean? What is it?
Field secretary. I'll get into it, what his position was. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But so we'll say that again, the National Association of Advancement of Colored People. We will be calling it the NAACP.
Thank God.
For short, moving forward. And that's what they call themselves. They shorthand theirs.
Yeah.
So in this position, he helped organize boycotts, and he set up new local chapters of the NAACP within Mississippi. They helped fight for voting rights for the African American community and more. So that was one of their big things, was really fighting for the voting rights of African Americans. Did that answer your question, Lola?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Medgar became a very prominent leader in the civil rights community, like we said, and he would regularly work 20 hours a day. This is not a week, this is a day, organizing marches, putting together protests, joining and leading prayer vigils. And
I thought you were going to say prayer virgins.
It was kind of like vigils and virgins came together and made
That's
baby.
fine.
I'm so sorry about that. I almost did it again. Vigils. That's a hard word for me. Good Lord. He would also help bail out people who had been arrested for trying to protest. And so he did a lot. He was a very, very busy man.
See, I want that job. Whoever bails people out from getting arrested at protests, that's the job I want.
That's the job you want.
Just slap somebody on the counter and be like, fuck you. Let them go.
Let them out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I cannot imagine working 20 hours a day.
No, was he okay? I'm concerned for his sleep habits.
When passion and like, I feel like he was so passionate about doing what was right that it overpowered the negative aspects of like having to work 20 hours. And that passion and that drive just kept him going every day to keep pushing the civil rights movement forward. It's just, I can't imagine. I'm like, how did you not just like fall over from being so tired? I can't. I mean, a superhero, if there ever was one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with his prominent position as an activist, came a lot of trouble from the white supremacist groups. Now, on May 28th, 1963, a Molotov cocktail was thrown into the carport of his home.
Yeah.
On June 7th, 1963, just a few days later, this is like a little over a week later, Medgar was nearly run down by a car after he came out of the NAACP's office in Jackson, Mississippi.
Oh my God.
And this is just a few times. There were like multiple times that like things happened to him or his family was scared or threatened. Like it was incessant, basically. Now, yes, the community was in uproar over desegregation and the Brown versus Board of Education ruling, but the church, they were furious over this ruling. The church had some words, just a little, just a smidge. Now, during Mississippi's 1956 legislative session, officials had proposed depriving churches of their tax-exempt status if they, quote, practiced integration.
What?
I mean, yeah. Yep. Tried to take away their tax exempt if they started to integrate their churches.
But honestly,
now,
what a small price to pay in order to be on the right side of history.
Right? I would have given it up. But it wasn't passed. Like it was met with opposition and eventually it didn't go through. But that didn't stop them. They were like, we're still going to fight for this. So in 1960, just 4 years later, Mississippi state legislator developed the, quote, church property bill. Now, this bill gave churches the ability to break away from their denomination if they changed their position on segregation. So if a church was pro-segregation and then tried to integrate and change their stance, this bill gave the churches that didn't agree the ability to split away from the denomination, but still hold ownership of the church building, the property, the supplies, curriculum, like everything inside. They got to still hold ownership because used to they'd have to relinquish it back to their denomination and then like start their own church and start from scratch. So they won in that way.
Okay.
One of the writers of this bill stated, when integration finally comes to Mississippi, it will come through the front doors of the churches in the disguise of religion.
That's dumb as hell. Okay.
Yeah. Just no words, really. Now, the church property bill passed the Senate by a comfortable 29-10 votes and the House by an overwhelming 87-13. Governor Ross Barnett signed the measure into law without comment. So, a very racist community and state.
Love a no commenter.
At this
Really?
time. No comment. Yeah. Now, on Sunday, June 9th, 1963, 4 students came together with Medgar Evers and Reverend Ed King to try and, quote, cross the color line, is what they called it. Now, this was at the First Baptist Church. Now, this was the largest Baptist church in Mississippi. And then they also were going to try it at the Galloway Memorial Methodist Church in Jackson, Mississippi. So Medgar drove the students to the Baptist church himself. The students were met out front by a deacon and told that their presence in church would, quote, disrupt the worship end quote. Now, the reason he used that exact phrase was because it was illegal during this time to disrupt a worship service. So by him saying this, it was giving he was setting it up to have them be able to be arrested if they didn't leave. And so it was giving him legal grounds, basically, to have them arrested. They didn't let that stop them. So they left that church and they went down the street and they went to the Galloway Methodist Church, which was I think 1 block away or so. Now, unfortunately there, ushers also came out and met them and didn't allow the students to enter. Even though the churches, both of them had a very similar response by refusing to let the students into their worship service, the way they responded afterwards was drastically different. So the mayor of the city was a member of the Methodist Church, and he and many members were very pro-segregation. But the senior pastor, Reverend Dr. W.B. Shayla, had always preached that there can be no color bar in a Christian church. So that Sunday, during the middle of the service, he was informed about what had happened. And after that, he rose to the pulpit, gave a short sermon on the Spirit of Christ, and he then pulled out a prepared statement that he had written and carried in his pocket for weeks, just in case Black worshipers had been denied entry to their worship service, and he tendered his resignation and quit right there on the spot.
Damn. Go hard.
I know.
Kyle,
I was good job.
Speak to this, please.
I know a pastor, former pastor, who is in our time.
Mm-hmm.
This is not many years ago.
Yeah.
Tried to integrate his church, believe it or not, and tried to bring in several Black families that wanted to join the church. And he was told directly by the board that if you try to welcome them in as members, we're going to fire you.
What?
And he quit.
What year was this?
And not too long ago. And you may know him, you may know his name. You can ask him the story. He'll know more about it than I do. Of course, his name is Todd Vick.
Oh my God. That was Todd?
Yeah.
Wait, that sounds familiar. Am I supposed to know Todd Vick? Because that sounds very familiar.
I'll tell you about him later. Oh my God.
Okay.
And he resigned. So
it is just so frustrating. Wow. I have no words. In our time, that still is happening. In our time. Gosh. It is. I literally have no words. I have no words.
You can't say that racism is dead. Anybody that holds that position to this day, you literally can't back that with anything.
Yeah.
A friend of mine told me that, and we're good friends. And he said, racism isn't real. And I said, yeah, to you, because you've never been a victim of racism.
I was going to say, is this person a person of color?
He's not.
Okay.
And mostly people, I've heard a few token people say it of our color, and I don't know what they're talking about. I just think,
Candace Owens.
Candace Owens type people. I don't know what you're talking. I mean, you just, that green has got you all messed up in the head. So, that's, okay. And I get it. Okay. You were chasing the dollars and you don't care who you trample along the way.
Yeah.
Right. So, but when people that are not of any color say it, I'm like, how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how you know. Because Fox News told you?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Tell me how you know it isn't real. Please, tell me how you know.
Their first response, I have a Black friend.
No.
Yeah. I have Black people that tell me that. Black people tell me all the time. Sure.
Okay.
Whatever you say.
Okay.
And most of them think racism probably, most of them probably think racism is, burning a cross in the local town square. Well,
right.
We don't see that anymore, so racism is dead.
Yeah.
But they don't know systemic racism.
Exactly.
They don't know how it affects education, jobs, communities,
healthcare,
everyday life. They have no clue about that. Politics, healthcare. There's a troubling statistic that I heard recently that there are more deaths in prenatal, in prenatal care. Or there's such a disparity. I can't talk tonight.
Discrepancy.
This discrepancy.
Infant and child mortality rates for people of color are so much higher.
Much higher.
Yeah.
And
Astronomically
the care
higher.
for the mothers, the prenatal care for mothers is so poor in our community. And that's systemic, you know?
Exactly.
That is. I'll tell you a little quick story. Sorry to cut your story off. But
Yes, please.
I was born premature.
Baby Kyle.
And I was born premature. And my mother, she was 17 and she didn't know much of anything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this whole thing. I was in an incubator and I was very light. I was incredibly light. You know, I was much lighter than I am right now.
Yeah.
And that's normal for Black babies. They're generally very, very light, and they get a little color over time. They kind of darken a little bit over time. Not drastically, but just, you know, they get their color, so to speak. Well, my mother, while I was in the incubator, my mother noticed that I was getting darker and darker and darker. And she didn't know much, and she questioned one of the nurses and said, "Why is he getting so much darker?" And they said, "Well, we're giving him melatonin." And they just gave me a lot of melatonin.
What?
Why?
And I didn't know this until recently. And I'd always wondered why I was so much darker than my family members. And when my mother was telling me this story, I was like, did they do that to Black babies on purpose? If they had a chance to, if the baby comes, you're premature, you got to be an incubator. Did they do that on purpose? Because, hey, maybe he looks too white and we need to darken him up, you know?
Because I can't melatonin. That's what helps you sleep. So
Do you mean melanin?
I'm sorry, melanin.
Melanin,
Oh, okay.
yeah, melanin is the pigment in the skin.
Sorry. Yeah, the
So,
melanin.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
everyone's like, what?
Okay, wanted you to sleep more?
I was like, how does melatonin change?
Yeah.
Melanin.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so as your baby is exposed to light outside the womb, naturally their body produces melanin that it wasn't producing in the womb. So like your DNA automatically makes you a person of color. So your skin will not be that like blanched, pinky, you know?
Yeah.
But it does, once it's exposed to light outside, naturally to protect it, it produces melanin.
To darken it over time. But it was happening so fast within the... Oh my gosh. Now that's a conspiracy. I could believe everybody.
Somebody in healthcare, weigh in.
I don't know if they did it on purpose or they just didn't care. Like, he'd be okay, kind of a thing.
Or like, is that part of the process? Yeah, we need somebody in healthcare to like weigh in and in the... Yeah, I need to ask this question because my brother's a nurse, and so I want to ask him and see what he says. He's not an OBGYN, or he doesn't do babies and pregnancy and things like that, but he might be able to answer the question. That's very curious.
There is no safe method to increase melanin.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's what I'm seeing right now on something.
And she specifically said, we're giving him melanin.
That's what my mother told me. Because she said, I remember her saying, you know, I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know. I was a kid. I didn't know. I just trusted what they were saying. Because she said she did question, why is he getting so much darker?
Right.
You know, why does he keep getting? Because every time she went to see me while I was still in the incubator, I was getting darker and darker and darker. And and so she did question that, but she said she didn't know. You know, she didn't know.
She just had a baby. Her hormones are going crazy. She's trying to recover, and she's 17.
And she was just so happy that I was alive. You know, I guess, you know, that she wasn't really so concerned about, you know, hey, Lord, because she was praying. She wasn't a Christian at that time, but she knew some element of prayer, like, Lord, just don't let me lose my baby.
Yeah.
You know, like, we'll worry about the rest of it later on.
Yeah, it's very scary. My husband was a preemie, and he was so small that his mom had to go to the store and buy Cabbage Patch doll clothes because I'm not kidding, because preemie clothes were swallowing him. So she had to go buy Cabbage Patch doll clothes, and that's what he wore for the first month of his life.
And he's so buff
Yeah.
now. And Kyle's so buff. This is weird.
You wouldn't know
And
it.
I'm tall.
Yeah.
I'm tall. I'm the tallest. I was the tallest in my family for a long time, but I'm tall, 6'3".
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
My husband's so
I
tall.
forget how tall you are.
shorty.
Oh my God.
Yeah. See, Lola thinks I'm super tall, so she was shocked when I told her I was 5'4". She's like, "How are you 5'4"? I thought you were way taller. I was like, "I'm not."
Yeah, me too.
I don't know.
I don't know why people think I'm tall. I'm not tall. No, 5'4". I'm a shorty.
You have very elongated features. You have an oval face.
I do.
And a long neck,
do.
which just makes me naturally think the rest of you is very long.
I have a little bit longer legs. I have a little bit longer arms, but I have a short little torso.
Heard that.
So,
Heard that.
that is me. No.
Sorry, I got us off track.
No, I like when we get off track. So
Good.
now, so the minister or the reverend, he resigned right on the spot. And also the associate minister followed suit. So they both quit their jobs at that moment. Now, on the other hand, the Baptist church, hard right turn. And that very same day, the board of deacons had a meeting and put together a resolution backing the church's actions, turning away the Black worshipers. The motion passed unanimously. They even made a statement saying that the FBC would confine its assemblies and fellowship to those other than the Negro race. So they dug their heels in and then dug them in again, and then just really made sure they were going nowhere on this issue. Now, Reverend Ed King and Medgar had a meeting at an all-African Methodist church a few days later to talk about the integration efforts and how to move forward. During this meeting, Medgar stated that he knew that the congregations of both of those churches were full of people who opposed desegregation, but that he was deeply moved by the actions of the Reverend. He said, quote, "What they said, what they did, refusing to preach in a segregated church now, that has made me feel better than anything in this whole movement in many days." I can't imagine how uplifting that would have been to have somebody as prominent as a pastor, because you already have the law. You already have Brown versus Board of Education trying to push civil rights in that direction. But now you have somebody within a church saying, "Nope, I can't, we're not going to do this." So I'm sure that was beyond uplifting for him. Now, at this meeting, Reverend Ed King left the meeting telling Medgar he would see him at the office the next day, not knowing that that was actually the last moment that he would see him. Medgar stayed at the church to continue working and didn't return home till a little after midnight on June 12th, 1963. Now, while he was working, President Kennedy was giving a televised speech on civil rights issues after many acts of violence on an Alabama University campus broke out due to integration. Now, as Medgar arrived home that day, he grabbed a pile of NAACP shirts that read, "Jim Crow must go," and got out of his car. As he was walking up to his house, a bullet struck him in the back, passing through his heart and knocking him to the ground. Surprisingly, Medgar was able to stand and stagger 30 feet before passing out at his front door. Merle, his wife, and his 3 children, James, Rena, and Daryl Evers, were home at the time of the assassination. Their son, Daryl, recalled the night. Quote, "We were ready to greet him because every time he came home, it was special for us. He was traveling a lot at that time. All of a sudden, we heard a shot. We knew what it was. Daryl and the other children," or that was the end of the quote, "Daryl and the other children fled to the bathroom to hide in the bathtub." This was something that his father had told them. Yep, trained them to do. Now, Merle went out and found Medgar at the front door, shot and bleeding. The kids ran out of the bathroom, I'm assuming after they heard their mom yelling Medgar's name. And they came outside and found their dad clinging to life. And I'm assuming at this point he was unconscious because the kids started yelling for their dad to wake up.
Ugh.
I know. That broke my heart when I heard that.
That's fucking gutting.
Now, I want you to remember, he's been shot in the back. The bullet went through his back and then out, I think it was his shoulder, chest area, full through. He's bleeding everywhere. He's unconscious. Murley gets him and takes him to the hospital. They arrive at this hospital only to be denied entry because he was a Black man. And this was an all-whites hospital. Murley had to sit there and tell them like who he was and everything. And then they finally, shockingly, allowed him entry into the hospital. He was actually the first Black man to be allowed entry into an all-white hospital. Unfortunately, Medgar passed away 50 minutes later. Now, when they did the investigation of the scene, they found the bullet ripped through his back, exited his chest, went through a window into their home, went through a wall, ricocheted off of their refrigerator, hit their coffee pot, shattered their coffee pot, and then the bullet landed on their counter next to a watermelon. And that's where they found the bullet.
How close in proximity was this person shooting him?
He was, I don't know if I ever heard how far he was. He was, from what I can imagine, because I watched the movie and they did a really good scene on it, he was a good, maybe a block-ish, maybe three quarters of a block away.
Rifle.
Yeah, he had a high-powered rifle, and
it was a rifle.
It ripped through everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like I said before, Medgar was a prominent leader during the civil rights era, making him a target for the KKK and other white supremacy groups. He had already had a few attempts to murder him before, which left him and his family in constant fear. So a large white supremacist population and the KKK were present in Jackson and its suburbs. The risk was so high that before his death, Medgar and his wife Murley had trained their children on what to do in case of a shooting, a bombing, or any other kind of attack. Now, Medgar, who was regularly followed home by at least 2 FBI agents and 1 police car, none of them were there. Not one. Not 1 FBI agent, not 1 police car followed him home that night. I mean,
it was a setup.
No words necessary. Like, come on. There has been speculation that many members of the police force at the time were members of the Ku Klux Klan. I did not find any solid proof that that was the case, but
I'm speculating.
If we look at history, this has been proven time and time and time again in multiple jurisdictions, Chicago to California to Florida, everywhere. You Google Ku Klux Klan police, you're going to find so many articles. I did just a quick little Google search, and I found that in Florida, there were officers connected to the KKK as early as the early 2010s. And that was just I literally looked for 30 seconds. So I'm sure if I dug deeper, there'd be an article that came out yesterday.
Yeah, that was a calculated plan as the KKK was looking for more ways to do what they do, but with more legality, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that was one of the plans that they came up with is let's infiltrate the police force.
Yes.
Which actually isn't very far away from the origin of the police force, which was initially created to track down runaway slaves.
Slaves, yes. Mm-hmm.
So, it has a long history. And when a person of color says we don't trust the police, it's not some rat thing. It's not some street thing. It's not some.
You're doing it to be cool.
I inherently, I inherently knew. No one told me. No one told me don't trust the police. I knew not to trust. I knew to be afraid. I knew not to trust them. I knew to. I remember I had my first car. I was at my first job. I was probably maybe 2021. Well, not my first car, but second car at this point. But anyway, still, I was working in a town called Nanuet, which was probably about 30 minutes from where I live. And I remember one night I got pulled over, and it was dark. And I remember the policeman coming to the car, and I said, "Mr. Officer, just please know that my registration's in the glove box. I have to reach over there to get it. So please don't shoot me."
Oh.
Because I'm not going to shoot. But I knew to say that.
Oh, my God.
I knew to say that.
I've never had to say that.
If he thinks I'm going to... I knew to say that. I knew.
Yeah.
No one told me. But I knew to say that. I grew up I went to high school in Virginia, which was more predominantly white than where I lived in New Jersey. And most of my friends were white. My best friend was white. And, you know, he got pulled over before. I'm sure he never said that.
Yeah. No,
never, like, what are you pulling me over for?
Yeah.
We don't get that privilege.
No,
I'll use that word. We don't get that privilege. We don't get I'm not going to go into the story, but, because I can go into a whole other story, and it's not a good one with another, well, I'm sorry, go ahead with the story.
Good. We'll bring you on for another day.
Yeah.
We'll bring you on another time, because I like all these stories. Yeah. No, I never had to say that. That never crossed my mind. I was scared, but I was scared because I was going to get a ticket, and my ass was like, how the fuck are you going to pay this? You're broke. That was my fear. It was never like, I'm not going to get to go home and eat a snack. Like, I'm not going to go to see my family. It was I never had that thought. And
my parents will have to ID my body. You never thought about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's how if you don't think you have privilege, just think about this scenario and what are you more likely to say? What did I do, officer? Or please don't shoot me. I don't have a gun. I just need to reach for paperwork. That is all.
Yeah. I have somebody close to me that is a trans person, and they live in a very, very red state that has a very, they're very discriminatory when it comes to trans people. And when they have to drive in bigger cities, they will have their partner drive so that they have a less likely chance of getting pulled over or stopped. And that's probably like the closest that I can come to even slightly understanding what the Black community has had to endure and fears just by being stopped by the cops. I'm going to keep going with the story, but I'm sure we can keep on.
Yeah.
Conversation. I'm sure we will, though.
This conversation will never end. That's the point.
And it shouldn't.
None of this will end. Yeah.
It shouldn't. It should keep going. We should have these conversations with our children and continue to have these conversations forever. Mm-hmm. End of story. Okay. So Medgar's funeral was on June 19th, and he was buried at Arlington National Cemetery, where he received full honors from the military. It's reported that there were around 3,000 attendees at his memorial service. I cannot imagine 3,000, but that just goes to show.
Well deserved.
Medgar had spent many years being one of the forerunners for equality and desegregation in the civil rights movement. So his impact on the African American community was very deep and is still felt to this day. Now, the murder weapon, including a fresh fingerprint on the rifle scope, was found in a field nearby. The police were able to trace the rifle back to a man named Byron De La Beckwith, Jr. Now, Byron De La Beckwith was born in Klaus, California, but his father died from pneumonia when Byron was only 5. Then him and his mom moved and settled into life in Greenwood, Mississippi, which is like about 90 miles from Jackson. Unfortunately, Byron's mom died when he was 12 from lung cancer, and he was then raised by his aunt and uncle, where he attended a prestigious prep school in Bell Buckle, Tennessee. So he had some privilege. In 1942, Byron enlisted in the Marines, where he was a machine gunner and served in World War II. During his time in war, he was shot in the side and ended up being honorably discharged in 1945. I'm going to hold my comment because it was not a nice one after that. I had an intrusive thought come in, and I thought, no, let's not get canceled.
No, let the intrusive thoughts win today.
I was just going to say that shot, man. Yep.
No, I hear your intrusive thought. It's so fucking loud. God.
Right? I don't need to say it.
It's okay, yeah. Is this person alive still?
No, he died. Yeah.
We'll just say the comment.
Not soon. That shot should have taken him out, okay?
Yeah.
It should have just...
He could have
Sorry,
saved.
not sorry, okay? Our world would have been a lot better. Because this guy, I'm telling you, he was a piece of shit if there ever was one. Now, let's keep going. Where was I? I got distracted by my intrusive thought.
Intrusive thought about the shot.
Okay, so he got honorably discharged in 1945. After he was discharged, he moved to Rhode Island, where he married his wife, Mary Louise Williams. Then they relocated to Mississippi, where they settled in Byron's hometown of Greenwood. They had a son, but then ended up divorcing when Byron remarried another woman. Now, Byron was a salesman for most of his life. He sold tobacco, fertilizer, wood stoves, and other random things. When the Brown versus Board of Education ruling was made in 1954, Byron immediately joined the White Citizens Council and later the KKK. Are we shocked? No, we're not. Not at all. Now, Byron was an active member of the Greenwood Episcopal Church of the Nativity, which shockingly, like the Episcopal Church is a very especially back in the 70s, they really started to change and become more affirming. And it's like, really? This was the denomination I really thought it was going to be Baptist. So I was slightly shocked at that one. But at this time, they're all racist. So, Well, he was very well known in the area because he would write letters to the editor of the newspaper that were a clusterfuck of Christianity and white supremacy. I mean, I'm going to read you one of these
Oh,
quotes.
God. Somebody save us.
Yeah. Okay. Quote, I shall oppose any person, place, or thing that opposes segregation. And further, when I die, I will be buried in a segregated cemetery. When you get to heaven, you will find me in the part that has a sign saying for whites only. And if I go to Hades, I'm going to raise hell all over Hades until I get to the white section. For the next 15 years, we here in Mississippi are going to have to do a lot of shooting to protect our wives, children, and ourselves from bad insert N word here. I wish you guys could see Lola's face right now.
They think that there's going to be a white section in
heaven
the
and
afterlife?
in Hades. And not just in heaven. He's like, if I go to hell, there's going to be a whites only section, and I'm gonna make sure I get there. What?
May I?
Yeah. Yes.
We have to protect our wives and children. One of the things that the media did after slavery, because in order to be so destructive to a people, you have to vilify these people. So with the Native Americans, they were savages. So when they're going in doing these genocidal acts, hey, they're savages.
Yeah.
It's in the consciousness of the people of that day. They're savages. They were going to kill us if we went in their territory. They were going to kill us if we tried to go west. I mean, they were going to surround our wagons and kill our children and kill our women and scalp us. They're savages. We've got to do something. So the propaganda goes out about this as they target this group because they want what they have. And so when these genocidal acts, lynching, hangings, these horrible acts happen, hey, these are animals. So what the media would do shortly after slavery is they would consistently put false articles in the newspapers of black men raping white women and doing terrible things to white women. And so, again, this propaganda that these black men, these angry black men, they're free now. They're going to come into your home, rape your children, kill your babies. And it's in the newspapers over and over and over again. So that's where some of that came from. And it became a real threat to them. It wasn't all hatred. It was, you're a threat to me. You're going to hurt us.
They were being controlled by fear, and fear that was guided by misinformation and propaganda.
Yes. Sounds familiar?
I was just about to say, oh my gosh, that's the world we still freaking live in. And in reference to Black Lives Matter, how many times, I will say no organization, I don't care what it's for, is going to be perfect. They're going to have skeletons in their closet. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to, a lot of them can be sketchy no matter what. But you see in the media, especially right-wing media, anytime anything happens with the Black Lives Matter organization or any Black person that was part of, protests or this or that has something come up that is illegal, they just, flies on honey, they stick with it and they just push it out as far as they can. Or George Floyd, when he died, they just wanted to focus on his past or the fact that he had a bag of white powder with him, as if all of that justified in their head the cops' use of force that took his life. And it's like, you're just using all of that other stuff to justify your inherent bias and not sit with the uncomfortable. It was like their way of just gaslighting themselves into like, oh, there's not really a problem right here. This is just society. This is what's comfortable. I don't want to change. I don't want to think of how this is uncomfortable or how I or my ancestors have played into this. No, he was a bad guy.
Could you imagine if Obama, when he was running for president, could you imagine had he said, I could shoot someone in Times Square and get away with it? Could you imagine had Obama said that during his presidential campaign?
Exactly. It would have been...
There would be no Obama.
Exactly.
There'd be no 8 years. That statement would have, okay.
Yeah.
Black man threatening to shoot people? Okay. There's no way.
Right.
No
and
way.
Then you have Trump, the whitest orange man there ever lived, come in and
sorry.
They and I, because I voted for him in 2016, biggest regret of my life, just brushed off everything he ever said. Oh, it's locker room talk.
Right.
And I'm actually writing a book and I talk about this in my chapter where we had been primed by what we were taught within the church, especially as women, that like you are subservient to men. And then what we are taught within history and our culture and politics, we had been primed to take all of that bullshit and be like, okay, this is fine, and just keep moving on. And they've been doing it for years and they still continue to do it. Oh my gosh. I'm going to need a Xanax after this. I'm just kidding.
At least we're becoming self-aware now, because I don't think they knew what they were doing. Not to say that makes it right, because it doesn't.
No.
But the more self-aware, our generations are, I feel like the better it's going to get. I'm looking up on that, in that regard, but you're right.
Try to see, we're trying to see the silver lining for sure. And I do want to point out the difference between when I read that quote, Lola and I's response was like, oh my God, this guy had all the audacity to think there was a white section in the afterlife, whatever that is. And Kyle, the black man, is like, let's focus on they're vilifying the black community. And that's just how,
exactly.
We don't see.
You're seeing it firsthand. This is why we're having this conversation.
Yes. And thank you for pointing that out and bringing that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And also, I had no idea you said that the law enforcement was created to track down slaves. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That has never occurred to me.
That's how they started. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I didn't learn that until I started down the journey of decolonization.
God.
Yeah.
Right.
Didn't know that.
It makes sense.
So, these things are, there's things that the medical field, the psychology and people of that nature, the mental health community, they talk about this DNA that's deep into the fabric of cultures. And, it's not a natural DNA, but it's a trauma-based DNA that's also passed down genetically. So it's kind of like how I knew, okay, Mr. Officer, my stuff is in the glove box here, kind of, please don't shoot me. Those fears, those things of protection, we got to protect, we got to keep it this, because this is safe. And, the reality is, and I don't mean this in any kind of way other than what history shows us, but we don't always see it. White people, Europeans, particularly in this matter, are the most have proven to be the most destructive, brutal,
absolutely,
bloodthirsty segment of population. I mean, from Napoleon to the Romans to, the list goes on and on. We want it, we'll come in and bloodbath everyone to get what we want, and no one's going to say anything to us. So this goes back and back, and we get Napoleon's story and these stories, and we go, oh wow, Napoleon's a great man, but we don't pay attention to what's happening behind the scenes. The same thing we did with Bible stories, right? David killed his thousands, and Moses, and he went in there, and these were heroes to us until we started thinking about the people they killed
on the other side,
the innocent lives that were destroyed, the babies, the women. I mean, like, what did these people do? And so, Moses became less and less of a hero. David became less and less of a hero. Napoleon becomes less and less. Christopher Columbus becomes less and less of a hero.
That motherfucker.
When you start thinking about what these people actually did to get what they had, it's horrible.
I remember
horrible.
Something just occurred to me about what you said about like Moses and whatever. I don't know if there's any correlation here, but I remember this vividly. Those flannel graphs where you'd have the characters on a flannel graph and you move them all around, whatever. Okay. All of the characters that were like main characters like Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Paul, whatever, they were all white. And the people that they were like saying you're wrong or they were like hurting were people that had dark skin on those flannel graphs. I remember that.
Oh my gosh. That's so heartbreaking.
Like I hadn't even thought about that until just now with what Kyle just said. It just unearthed that memory and I was like, oh my God. It was so normalized. And like the way that we viewed people, we put them in white.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Anyway, that's all.
Real quick, what you were saying, that generational trauma. So when I went through my trauma recovery coaching certification, we actually had where we studied generational trauma and they taught us about how it was. And I actually had to do I don't know what it was called, but basically a family history based off of our trauma. One of the most interesting things I ever did, my brother was in nursing school at the same time, and he actually had to do the same thing. And so like we got to bounce off each other and talk about our family trauma and stuff like through 3 generations. And it was so interesting to see how that like early generations of trauma trickled down throughout the other generations. And it's one of those things you can't science your way out of, you just know it's there. Like it's like we don't have this like concrete proof besides what we can see in stories and generations and we can kind of map out kind of thing. But yeah, it's very real. Google it, people. It's fascinating, honestly. Okay. So where was I? Okay. So his quote, that clusterfuck of a, 2 years before he murdered Medgar Evers, he had heard that some African Americans were going to try and attend his church. So he decided that his response was going to be arriving at the church very early that Sunday and then stand on the steps while holding his pistol and to scare away any Black people that would try to enter. And then when all the people would come to church and walk past him, he would tell them, quote, "I'll handle things." Wow. Like that's how he decided to handle that.
Thanks,
like, so,
Brother Byron.
Yeah, he was.
As they trot up the stairs. They're going inside.
Okay. Yeah. So very clear. He's joined the White Council. He's part of the KKK. Yeah. He does not like Black people for sure. Now, they found his print on the gun. So they were pretty sure this guy pulled the trigger. He tried to say, "Oh, someone stole my gun." Give me a break, dude. Okay. Now, the state tried to prosecute Byron for murder in 1964, but they ended up having to have 2 trials, and both trials ended in a hung jury. And so they could not get everybody on the jury to agree guilty or not guilty. So it was a hung jury, meaning that like charges could still be brought on to Byron after this. And Mississippi for years had disenfranchised their Black voters. Like we talked about earlier, they disenfranchised and they got a lot of their votes cast out. And I'm pretty sure when that happened, they were like not registered to vote anymore. And when you get pulled, like when they pull from people to the pool of people
jury.
that they get from to put them on the jury is from voter registration. So both of these trials were a full white jury, right? And they had, it was very common in this area, and people were talking about how like no white jury is ever gonna find that man guilty.
Convict. Right.
Mm-hmm. At one of his trials, the jury actually saw the former governor of Mississippi go up to Byron and shake his hand while the court case is literally, while the trial is being held, and Medgar's wife Merle is she's on the witness stand, testifying in that moment.
You son of a bitch.
So it gives credibility to Byron. And so like this Medgar had no chance to get a justice in these two trials.
Somebody needs to wax this guy's balls.
Oh my gosh. Lola went there. That would be...
Should have let me at him.
Oh my gosh, that'd be super funny, honestly. Okay. Also, Byron's legal fees were paid for by none other than the White Citizens Council.
Yeah.
So after both of Byron's mistrials, this is just fucking wild to me. A fucking parade.
No.
Yes, a fucking parade was held for him, welcoming him home. And it was organized, it said, from Jackson, Mississippi down to Greenwood, Mississippi, which is stretching 99 miles. So I'm going to tell you, it was hard as shit to find information about this parade. And I only learned about it because of the movie. And so I had to do some digging. And it was only based off of like notes from the movie and like the producers and stuff that I was able to kind of piece it together. But from what I could tell, that this was actually a real thing that actually happened, because the movie that's made over this it doesn't say based on a true story. It says this is a true story. Like they followed it to a T to make the movie. And I'll talk about the movie more at the end. But yeah, he got a parade. Whew.
I don't want to scream.
But you kind of want to.
The listeners don't deserve it.
We will save your ears. In the following years, Byron became a leader in the segregationist Finneyist priesthood, an offshoot of the white supremacist Christian identity movement. The group was known for its hostility towards African Americans, Jews, Catholics, and foreigners. So he was just a peach. In 1973, Lola's covering her face, guys. She really wants to scream right now.
Gone full turtle into my sweater because I'm so frustrated.
Yes. Well, in 1973, informants alerted the FBI that Byron planned to murder a man named AJ. Is it AJ or AI? I think it was either way. A man, Mr. Botnick. He was going to murder him. So he was the director of the New Orleans-based... Hold on. I wrote it down.
Okay. I believe you.
B'nai B'rith. That's how you say it. Sorry, it's not spelled that way. So B'nai B'rith is how you say it. Anti-Defamation League, which is a Jewish service organization that fights against anti-Semitism. The attack was a racially motivated retaliation for comments that Botnick had made about white Southerners and race relations. Now, after many days under surveillance, a New Orleans Police Department officer stopped Byron as he was traveling by car on the Lake Pontchartrain. See, guys, here I go again. On a bridge, they stopped him and they searched his car. See, I'm just going to skip over that. They searched his car and found several loaded firearms, a map with highlighted directions to Botnick's home, and a dynamite time bomb. So it's pretty evidence he was going to murder this man. On August 1st, 1975, Byron was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, and he served nearly 3 years at the Anglo prison in Louisiana from May 1977 until he was paroled in January of 1980. He didn't even serve 3 years. Like, he was going to murder somebody. Yeah, no, that's all I got. Now,
3 years.
Just before entering prison to serve his sentence, Byron was ordained by Reverend Dewey Tucker, nicknamed as Buddy. He was ordained as a
Not like this, Dewey. God.
He was ordained as a minister in the Temple Memorial Baptist Church, which, okay, Baptist, that we're tracking here now. It was a Christian identity congregation in Knoxville, Tennessee. So now he's some kind of priest or reverend. So wonderful. Don't love that for him. In 1980, the Jackson Clarion Ledger published reports on its investigation of Byron's murder trials in the 1960s. They found that the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission had assisted Byron's attorneys in his second trial. So the commission had worked directly against the civil rights movement in numerous ways in many different cases. But when it came to Byron's second trial, they found that the commission had used state resources in order to investigate members of the jury pool so that they could help the Byron's legal team get a more sympathetic jury for his second trial. So because of this, and after this came out, Medgar's widowed wife, Merle, she was like a dog with a bone. She was not going to stop. And so she fought for authorities to press charges and reopen the case. The authorities did an internal investigation and found credibility to those claims, which that Byron was set. So with that, Byron was set to go back to trial in 1994. By this time, Byron was 71 years old, and he'd fought to have the case dismissed on the basis of it violating his right to a speedy trial. Now, the due process, right? And so he tried to fight that, and he tried to say double jeopardy, which doesn't apply because it was a hung jury. So he was never actually convicted or found not guilty. So charges could still be brought. Now, the Mississippi Supreme Court ruled against his motion of a dismissal by 4-3 votes. So it came close. Like there were still some people that were almost voting to just let him dismiss the trial. But this meant that the retrial was set to move forward. In January of 1994, the trial began, and on February 5th, 1994, the jury convicted Byron of first-degree murder in the killing of Medgar Evers. He was sentenced to life in prison. The physical evidence was the same from the first two trials, but this trial included testimony that he had boasted about the murder at a Klan rally and to others during the 3 decades since the murder. Now, according to Delmar Dennis, who acted as a key witness for the prosecution at the 1994 retrial, Byron boasted of his role in the death of Medgar Evers at several KKK rallies and similar gatherings in the years following his mistrials. Now, Byron appealed his case after he was finally sentenced, but the Mississippi Supreme Court upheld the conviction in 1997. The court stated that even though there was a 31-year lapse between the murder and his conviction, it did not deny him a fair trial. He sought judicial review in the United States Supreme Court, but his petition again was denied. On January 21st, 2001, Byron De La Beckwith died at 80 years old. He suffered from heart disease, high blood pressure, and other ailments. I put in my notes, rest in hell.
Good.
Even though I don't believe in it, but I wish I believed in hell because this man deserves to go there. Now,
Kyle, I swear every time she talks about someone that's just a piece of shit, which is often,
I say it all the time.
She always ends it with like, I'm not a Christian, but
like these are the moments
I might be convinced if hell was real,
like these are the moments
she would be happy to see these people put away.
These are the moments that I wish I believed in hell because it would just help me feel better. You know, it's that very black and white, you know, just to know that this man's being burned or this person is being burned for all eternity. It just makes me feel better. That's not our reality, or at least in my opinion. Now, I want to talk about Medgar's legacy, and I am going to talk about the movie, and I am going to link it, and I want you guys to watch it. It is phenomenal. Okay, so
I'm going to watch it.
So good. Medgar's legacy lives on in many ways. At Alcorn State University, Medgar's alma mater, there is a 13-foot bronze statue of him that was sculpted by African-American sculptor Ed Dwight. The Medgar Evers College was founded in his name in 1970. Chairman Enoch of the college stated, quote, the Medgar Evers College, reflecting the image of the martyred leader who dedicated his life to the cause of individual freedom, dignity, and personal fulfillment, will add another pillar of strength to the growing educational, economic, cultural, and social foundations of the central Brooklyn community in New York City. On a scroll that was presented, this was so cute, on a scroll that was presented to Medgar's wife at the opening ceremony of this college, it stated, in choosing the name of Medgar Evers, it is hoped that his ideals will inspire students and faculty of the college in their pursuit of truth as the surest path to human freedom and social justice. Now, like we've talked about, one of the biggest ways Medgar impacted social justice was with voting. On the Medgar Evers College website, it sums up this part of his legacy so well. And so I just want to read straight off their website because it's just, chef's kiss. Quote, as we watch millions of voters head to the polls in an election year, many of them African American, other people of color, and female, too often we forget that those ballots cast were paid for in blood. By exercising the franchise, we actively pay tribute to those men and women who made it possible for us to do so. I read that and I teared up. I was like,
don't say in Jesus' name, amen. Say in Medgar Evers' name, amen.
Medgar Evers' name, amen. Now, I will be linking all of this in the show notes of his college and things so you can guys just and go and peruse it. It's really, really good. Now, the movie, let's talk about the movie because the movie is so good. It was made in 1997 and the stars of the movie are Whoopi Goldberg. I love me some Whoopi. I fucking love Whoopi Goldberg. She's like, I would shit a brick if I got to meet her one day, I swear.
Oh, God.
And the prosecution attorney is played by Alex Baldwin. So they're very big name actors and actresses that are in the movie. Now, the movie focuses on the third retrial of Byron. And so it's very quickly goes through his murder and then the first two trials within I swear the first 5-10 minutes of the movie. And then the rest of it is their fight to get it retried. And I very much did sum up a lot of it within this case because I wanted to have enough time to talk with Kyle throughout this. But I very much implore you guys to please go and watch this movie. I do not think that it's available to stream anywhere for free. You have to purchase it on Amazon. So if you have a Prime account, please go and watch it. I will add a link to it, but it will be a non-commission link because we do have Amazon links that we do make a commission on. I'm not going to commission this link. I just don't feel right about doing it for this case. So if you can go and buy it, and it's such a good movie, trust me, it's one of those ones you're going to want to watch 13 times. It's just so good and it's very factual in its presentation. But yeah, that is the awful racist assassination of Medgar Evers. So Kyle, any last thoughts or comments? I'm so glad you came on today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and allowing my voice to be part of this. There's so much that's been a long time coming. And I am a forever optimist. I am. I see where humanity has come from. I see where we are. And although sometimes things happen that just break us to our core, the George Floyds, the Ahmaud Arbery's, the Emmett Till's, the list goes on and on, Breonna Taylor's. And every time this happens, it eats a little bit more away of our fiber and our ability to be okay with it. But what also happened with George Floyd particularly was it brought humanity to another level of consciousness, I believe. And that awareness had people all over the world saying, this is wrong. This has to stop. And although he wasn't doing anything for the cause of advancement and equality, his death did a lot for the cause of equality and unity and coming together. So, it's unfortunate that a death often has to occur for things to get a little bit better. But that's been the way that it's been in a lot of cases. Unfortunately, I guess a better way to say it is it's been a lot of us that have died for the advancement. And I don't wish.
The cost of blood is too high.
Yeah, it is very high.
There's got to be another way.
Got to be another way. And I think that as we continue to grow in our consciousness and embrace that openness of the consciousness that's there, and it's bringing people to a better place of acceptance and tolerance, not tolerance, but just acceptance for people.
Coexist.
And we see it in all different segments. You mentioned the trans, obviously women, people of color, things of this nature. We're getting more accepting. Let people be who they are. Let people live. Let just people live their lives and things of that nature. So,
yeah. And I think for me, my biggest hope and the silver lining and my optimism comes out when I think of the younger generation, especially those like in high school right now. Like we have some high school students that listen to our podcast. Shout out Libby. I have a girl that she listens to our podcast all the time. I love her. But like
what up, Liv?
Yeah. I've just seen so much acceptance and open-mindedness with this generation. And I have seen them I have seen some protests when like right-wing crazy people try to come speak at their college and they are not having it. And I have seen time and time again, let their voices be heard. And so as much as we can help them continue lifting their voices, keep this conversation going, stand up for their friends and family and loved ones and for what is right, and to just push it forward. That's where my optimism comes from, because that generation, they're like the bulldog generation. I feel like they're not going to let go.
And Kyle, you said, one of the biggest things that we can do is advocate on behalf of, people of color, since we are the ones that hold the privilege. Is there anything else that we can do at this point in time?
Well, there's only a very small percentage of people in your community that are just full of hate for people of color. There's a very small percentage. Now there's probably a larger percentage of people that are just indifferent to the topic and the matter. And it's that group of people that, as they speak more, it'll shine a light on those people full of hate, because they feel they have a safe harbor in their community.
Yeah.
And if they don't feel safe anymore, then hopefully that hatred, which is for no reason at all.
Absolutely.
Laci, you said it earlier. I mean, I can't help how I was born. I was born white. What do you want me to do? I just swear it was. I was born black. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?
Unfounded.
What do you want me to do? You want me to shoot myself in the head because you're unhappy because I'm black? That's not going to happen. So just go live your life. What does my color have to do with you? So I think as that, that group that's been more quiet in historically speaking, as they get louder in their voices, the younger generation, your generation, what you guys are doing. I mean, you may not have done this 5 years ago, So this is the type of progress I'm talking about. The more voices, it gives those people, that small percentage in your community, that's where the hate really is, where the evil really is, where that the murder and the hurt comes from. It gives them a less of a place to hide.
Yeah.
And feel safe to be the way they are.
It is time to make them feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. You're not safe here, racist.
And one of the things we know historically is when people who have a perceived power begin to think they're losing that power, then you get the grasping at the straws and all these tactics to try to hold them to something. But, this is a reality. We're brainwashed to believe that white people are the majority across the world, and they're not. Because when you bring in all the other cultures, Indian, Chinese, Black, Hispanic, you bring in all these other cultures, and white people are not the majority. And I think that that's one of the reasons why they, a segment fights so hard to try to keep what they have, because it's inevitable. And this is not me trying to promote fear in your group, but hey, guess what, guys? I mean, you're going to have to get accustomed to the fact that, Spanish is going to be more prominent in this country. Chinese is going to be more predominant in this country. Indian is going to be more predominant in this country. Black is going to be more predominant in this country. It's going to happen. There's nothing you can do with it. There's nothing you can do about it. So you might as well just go with it. Trust me, nothing's going to happen to you. You're going to be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Trust me, So just let the process go, because we're growing and we're going to continue to grow. And we're going to find that if we all just come together, work together, love one another, things will go pretty well. They really will. We've proven that, and we continue to prove it time and time again. So I'm happy for what we're doing, and the progress we're making. And I'm optimistically excited about what's next, how we continue to move it forward. And we are, you two are evidence of that. Here tonight, you're evidence of that.
Trying.
Now, I do want to say, like when you said, like making them feel unsafe, like making them feel uncomfortable to just like spout off their racist bullshit when they want to. Now, this is a comfortable conversation that we are having right here, us three, because we are like-minded. The uncomfortable conversations are when Uncle Billy at Thanksgiving decides to spout off some kind of racist comment. So I will challenge you, if it is a safe environment for yourself, to speak up in that moment. It is uncomfortable, and I speak from experience, and there have been times when I've spoken up, and there's been times when I haven't, and I'm kicking myself in the ass when I walk away or a few minutes later. I had the house we lived in when we first moved to Tennessee. The people who rented it before us were struggling with a drug addiction, and they let the house go to shambles, and it was a hot mess for the homeowner. Well, the homeowner ended up fixing the house up, getting it cleaned up, and it was pretty bad. When we didn't know this until after we moved into the home and started renting it, and there were a lot of problems we had with it. Long story short, but basically, I was talking to another mom at school about it, and she leaned into me and goes, "Yeah, it was a Black family who was renting it." And I stepped back, and I was like taken aback by what she said, because I was like, I said, it wasn't.
Why does that matter?
I literally looked at her and I was like, it wasn't because they were Black, it's because they were struggling with a drug addiction. And you could tell instantly she got uncomfortable. And there's that and homophobia. Racism and homophobia are the two things that I have stopped. And it's taken a lot of courage, a lot of courageous conversations and time for me to get to that point of being able to call that shit out in the moment. And it's been very hard. So I understand those that are like having those moments. But I called her out because I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I live in the Appalachian Mountains. There are like 30,000 drug addicted white people to every one drug addicted Black person. So I was like, ma'am, can you please just look around you right now? That is just stupid. I was like, yeah, yeah. So I challenge listeners, if that happens, if you are safe, it is a safe environment for you and yourself. Speak up, say something, make them feel uncomfortable, because it's not okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, go Lola.
Yeah. The uncomfortable conversations, when they happen, you may lose friends. You may lose, your notoriety, or like, I don't know, you may lose your reputation. But I think that's a better cost than the bloodshed.
Absolutely.
So weigh it like that in your mind whenever you come into a situation like that. Obviously, make sure it's a safe situation for you to speak your truth. But like, even if this is going to end poorly, like, I'm not coming out of this without, this friend being angry with me or this uncle not talking to me for 6 weeks. I think it was well worth it as opposed to another body from one of,
And I speak from experience. I actually lost a friend who was like was my best friend at the moment whenever I was like just starting like deconstruction and decolonizing and really understanding. And it was very shortly after George Floyd had died. And some cop had shot a Black man who was drunk and like running away like from custody. And he shot and killed the Black man. And then he lost his job. And she was all up in arms about this man losing his job. And I was like, a man lost his life. Like, can we talk about that?
Yeah.
And I challenged her and I had these conversations with her and I was not scared to speak my mind, but I lost my friendship with her. And there was multiple reasons with it, but she actually, one of the texts she sent me was, you stand for equality and I don't. I'm not fucking kidding.
You're showing your true character, honey. Oh,
she legit sent me that text and I was like, all right, peace out. And I walked away. Like, I was like, there's no getting through to you.
No.
And I've said what I've said, but I walked away from that relationship and I don't look back on it because honestly, those relationships cause you a lot of stress and you need to say your piece. And if they're not willing to listen and understand, it might not be a relationship that you want to be in, or it's at least a relationship you need to set some strong boundaries. Because, wow.
Yeah. Okay, enough about us. Kyle, we've kept you a while. Is there anything else you want to add before we close out?
Just one more thought. And this is just to give the listeners something to think about. And I'm not casting judgment, just something to think about. The word minority, immigrant, migrant, words like that, are they words that I believe were strategically designed to keep a people from being humanized. And every time I talk about this, the only people who object to these words are people who've never been called these words. And so think about that. If you find yourself objectable to someone like me saying we should get rid of the word minority, no one's a minority. We're human beings. No one's an immigrant. We're human beings. No one's a migrant. We're not these things. You dehumanize groups of people when you label these people. Oh, that's just some old immigrant. No, this is a human being. So if those words trouble you, if you get, oh man, when someone says, don't use these words or these words should go away. We shouldn't call people these. Well, what do you want us to call them? They're here illegally. There's no such. How can a human being be illegal?
We are here illegally. We took the land from the Native Americans, so like we're illegal immigrants. So if we really want to get technical,
exactly. Which of course, no. Then of course the stuttering starts and the how dare you kind of and they start diverting.
Yeah.
So if those words, if the thought of those words going away trouble you, just ask yourself why.
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself why. Mm-hmm. Why does it trouble you?
Yeah.
Why does it trouble you to get rid of words that dehumanize groups of people? Because it doesn't mean you have to open up your door to them and say, hey, come live in my house. It doesn't mean you have to say, hey, come take my job. It doesn't mean you have to say, hey, come take my possessions or anything. It just means that we don't use these words to dehumanize groups of people because they are people first and foremost.
Yes.
So if the words trouble you, if you find yourself, again, getting enraged when someone suggests, like me, let's get rid of these words, just ask yourself why.
That's an excellent challenge. Thank you for giving our listeners something to think about. And thank you for being transparent with us. Kyle, at the end, we do a palate cleanser after a hard case because we have to sleep at night. So, Laci, do you have a palate cleanser today?
Actually, I do. I guess I'll make the announcement for this episode. But really quick, on top of what Eric, I called you Eric again, Kyle on top of Eric's our editor, guys. I don't know. I get these mixed up all the time. Sorry, Kyle. Sorry. On top of what Kyle said about like, if this makes you uncomfortable, if this episode makes you uncomfortable, if what we've been talking about makes you uncomfortable, sit with it. Ask yourself why. Reach out to, other people of color who are creators on TikTok or Instagram, and we will tag some of our favorites in the show notes, and you guys can go and follow them and learn and sit with it. The first step is sit with your uncomfortableness, and that's all you have to do. Sit with it. Don't speak.
Valid.
If you speak on your anger, you're going to dig yourself into a hole. Okay, just sit with it. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Palate cleanser. I got accepted to my local college today.
Yes, she got accepted.
So
we're so excited for Laci.
I am very excited.
Congrats.
I am going back for cardiovascular technology. So it is like I will do EKG, stress tests, things like that. I wanted to go back because my cult leader picked my degree, and it was all like very much designed and picked by him, and I hated it, never used it, never actually even finished. And so I wanted to choose something of my own, and I wanted something that if A, we got canceled by the internet and this podcast we can't no more, and B, if something ever happened to my husband and he was out of work, that I could be a single mom and raise my family. And so I picked this one. So it'll probably take me 3-4 years to finish. It's a 2-year degree, but I can't go full time every semester. I got 3 kids and I got other stuff on my plate. So, but yeah, I start in January of 2024. So I'm really excited. And I'm starting with a bang, and I'm taking anatomy and physiology.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Hell yeah. I love it.
I'm
a little bit of encouragement to that end. My sister, who is just a couple years younger than me, a couple years ago, just, did her master's.
Love it.
And which was, 2 years or 3 or 4 years before that she finally finished her, her bachelor's degree. And again, she was probably, pushing 40 at the time when she started that journey. And she was single mom, 3 kids, that whole thing. And she got really stoked up after she got her degree, and then immediately said, I'm going to go get my master's, and did that whole thing. And so you can definitely do it.
Yeah, I'm impressed. My 16-year-old niece, when I told her I was going back, she was like, "You're going to college at your age?" It's like, shut your damn mouth, Charles.
Oh my God.
Shut it all the way down. All the way down. All the way down.
I was like, that is such a 16-year-old thing to say, but it gave me a laugh. Give me a laugh. Anyways, do you have a palate cleanser there, Lola?
My palate cleanser is that I'm getting back into yoga, and it's been very good for my back.
And you've been doing dance.
Oh yeah. I always dance all the time, but yeah.
You've been taking an actual dance class though.
Yeah, I've been doing some dance classes recently, so.
Love it.
I will not be demonstrating for anyone anytime soon. So.
That's okay. We won't ask you, even though I should probably get back into yoga, but I'm not going to add another thing on my plate. I've got too much shit going on anyways.
That's fine.
It is, but yeah, guys, I hope you liked that episode, and I hope you enjoyed our very first guest, Kyle. It was such a pleasure to have you, and thank you so much. And surprise, we have another guest coming at you for next week, so it'll be a little surprise. I'm not, but I'm very excited. We're just going out a bang. We're doing interview after interview, and of course, you will have a case within the episode as well. So. Come back, be surprised on who it is, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Also, heathens, if you're enjoying the show so far, please remember to subscribe on whatever platform you listen to us on, and remember to bring your sacrifice to the blood ritual. Just kidding, a review will suffice. Deadly Faith is brought to you by Choircast Network. It's produced by Laci Bean and Lola Robbins, and audio engineered by Eric Cowell. Thanks for listening.